Welcome back, AG Sports. Thank you again for tuning in, guys. First of all, let me get started with the good news this time. So this week, preseason gambling went about as great as it could be expected. We went a total of 2-0-1, 2 wins, 0 losses, and 1 push. So the first week was rocky. If you remember, we went 2-3. The second week, we cut back down. We went 1-0. And then the third week, we went, like I said, 2-0-1. So over the last 2 weeks, I'm 3-0-1, making you 3 units overall and losing you nothing. If you were tailing the entire preseason, we still ended up 1.7 units above where we started. So if you were playing $100 a hand or there or a bet, then you're up about $170 right now. Just kind of adjust the math if you do different unit sizes. That being said, though, I have a few videos coming up for this week and then next week, and these are going to be more, intricate videos as far as different things that I expect. Like today's video is going to be regression factors and regression to the mean, and I'll go over some of the things that really stand out as far as regression and items that we can expect to regress. And then we'll have some other videos, like I do have a round robin that I just placed this morning, and I want to kind of give that to you guys, but I'll make that a separate video because I don't want to keep these as long as they have been going. And so today, again, if you're going to go ahead and tune in, it's going to be the regression factors for the NFL. The number one biggest regression factor is one score win percentage. And why is that number one? Well, it doesn't mean that it's going to regress or any more than any other stat. But the one score win percentage is the biggest indicator of or separator, I should say, of playoff teams versus non-playoff teams. It's going to take a good team it's going to make them look great, and it's going to make a decent team look bad depending on their one score win percentage. So I will tell you right now that the average one score win percentage is 50%. And before I get into the rest of the numbers here, I guess I should tell you what does that mean if it's not kind of self-evident. When a game is decided by one score or less, which I classify that as 7 points. Some people classify that as 8. I'll give you my quick thought on that. The reason I say 7 instead of 8, while yes, the extra point, you still have to, obviously make the kick. When it comes down to 8 points, you're not asking for just a score. You're asking for your team to get into the end zone twice. And so that is hard enough to do one time. To make it a second time, you're just tacking on an additional factor of difficulty. So I leave the one score win percentage at 7 points. That being said, most teams kind of end around the middle, meaning that let's say that they have 8 games that go 50, that end within a one score of win factor, meaning they won or they lost by 3 points or 7 points or 6 points or something like that. At the end of the season, they'll usually go about 50-50. So they'll have like 4 wins that came by less than a touchdown, and they'll have 4 losses that came by less than a touchdown. When you get to the extremes of those lines, though, is when you see teams that are really, really good. For instance, the Chiefs had a 100% win rate in one score win percentages. Now, they did still have 8 games that ended up being one score games, which, again, that's about average. You're going to have about half your games that are decided by a touchdown or less. The Chiefs are just so good that they were able to win 100% of those games. Now, what about the other end of that? Well, we have teams like, let's take the Bengals, who are not good. They had 7 games that were decided by a touchdown or less. So again, you're right around the average, but they were only able to win 14% of those games, which means that team just isn't very good. And more specifically, the way that my algorithm has it, it's the coach that's not very good. And when you stop and think about it, a lot of the one score win percentages is going to come down to the coaching. First of all, you need the plays, of course, to win those games. You need to put your team in the right position to even be able to win. But you also have to be able to manage the clock. You have to be efficient with your play calling. And you have to be cognizant of the changes and kind of adapt to what you think is going to happen, not just what happened on this particular series. For example, let's take the NFC Championship game last year. I think LaFleur is a fine coach. I think he's actually decent, but I don't think he is as good as what people have made him out to be. And my example of that is in the NFC Championship game, they were down by 8 points. They drove down the field. They got I believe, to like the 8-yard line. They went 3 passing attempts to the end zone. They all got broken up. It's 4th down. There's about 2 minutes left to go. Down by 8 points. What did he do? He kicked a field goal. He effectively made a 1-score or 1-possession game. And yes, like I said, you still have to get in the end zone twice, but it was possible with only 2 minutes left. That time scenario, he went from, I need to get a touchdown on a 2-point conversion, to I still need a touchdown. So either way, he was going to need a touchdown at the end of the game, and all he did was start all over again. So bad play calling, just kind of not cognizant of what's going to happen here when I execute this field goal or whatever their action they're trying to do. And then on the flip side, what is the other team going to do when they get the ball back? Obviously the Buccaneers just ran, and they could milk the clock, got it down to like 30 seconds left or whatever, and that was basically it. That was the end of the game. So coaches need to be aware of not only what they're doing, what the other side is doing, and what's going to be coming up, not just what the current score is. So for those reasons, like I said, the 1-score game really is going to rely on your coaching. And if you look down the list here, as far as teams that are good at closing these games out and winning these 1-score games, you'll notice a very stark similarity. They all have good to great coaches. That's just the way it is. So one thing I want to bring up here is, like I said, that can and probably will regress a lot for most teams that are not truly excellent teams. Like the Chiefs, I don't think they're going to go 100% again, but I would be very, very shocked if they fall, let's say, below like 60% win percentage on 1-score games. And that's pretty low. But other teams like the Bengals, they're so bad that I don't think that even regression to the mean, I don't think they're going to get up to 50%. Maybe it increases. Maybe they get to like 30 or 40% win rate, but I don't think they'll get to 50. And again, this is not an indication of the players. I like Joe Burrow. I think Jamar Chase is going to be fine. It's just strictly the coach that I don't trust. Now, I'm going to give you a list in here in a second of all the teams that I think are primed for regression, either on the up or downside. But before we get into that, I want to go to my next regression factor, which is turnovers. So if you're looking at this chart here, I have every team's turnovers from last year as far as turnovers that they caused and turnovers that they gave up. And teams that have extreme ratios on turnovers mean that they either got way over, their turnover ratio is way over average, or teams that turned the ball over a lot, meaning they gave up the ball a lot. Those are, again, going to be your two extremes, and you'll see the same differences there. Good teams get turnovers, bad teams lose turnovers. And the NFL average is actually a turnover ratio of 0, meaning that you end up having as many turnovers as you take away from the other teams. And there's a couple of teams that you see this here, like in the beginning, with the Cardinals having a 0% turnover ratio. Again, the Rams, 0% turnover ratio. So that 0 does come up here and there, and there's a couple of like 10s and 20s and 30s. So that is the average, is to be exactly even as far as turnovers are concerned. So let's take a look at the teams that, like I said, are primed for regression. So these are teams that had a +7 turnover ratio, meaning that they took the ball away 7 more times than they gave it up. So the Browns, the Colts, the Chiefs, the Dolphins, the Saints, the Steelers, and the Titans, they all had at least a +7 turnover ratio. The Chiefs, again, they're an amazing team, right? They were +11 on turnover ratios. Now, some of these, like I said, are going to regress, and some of these are probably not going to regress. Again, like the Chiefs, teams that are truly excellent, and not just the players, but the coach as well. Those teams can maybe not sustain such a high rate, but they can consistently be very close and consistently give us these excellent numbers. So let's say the Chiefs and maybe the Browns, because they have a great defense, possibly the Steelers, depending on how that goes, we could see the turnover ratio again being like a +7. And those are going to be huge game swingers when they can take the ball away and they're not giving it right back. So aside from just the turnovers, what about their one-score win rate? So the Browns had an 88% one-score win rate, The Colts had 67%, the Chiefs at 100%, the Dolphins only had 40%, so they only won 40% of their one-score wins, or their one-score games. The Steelers ended at 63%, 78%, Saints were at 63%, and I'll get you the Titans here in a second. But again, just trying to hammer this point home, that these teams that are good and that appear excellent to us, they have two things in common. They take the ball away, and they know how to win these tight games. And so the teams that I think are going to stay on the top, they're going to keep these excellent levels that create winning teams. The Browns, the Chiefs, possibly the Steelers. And that's about it. Those are the three teams that I think can really keep up this superb excellence. Now, the Browns, I will say, I like them a lot. And I think that it's their style of play that helps them do these things. It helps them get these great numbers. Being able to run the ball a lot, using a lot of 12 formation really helps Baker, because it gives 12 formations having two tight ends in line. So they are there to help protect Baker, give him as much time as possible, and if needed, then they can also make a catch. But it also helps the run, and it also kind of disguises what you're doing, because if you're consistently rolling out 12 personnel, the defense may think you're running because you have this big set out there, and now you maybe a little bit more cushion as far as passing is concerned. And once you start passing the ball, well, now they're not really sure what to play, and now you have some running lanes, and you have extra protection for your running back or your quarterback. So being able to kind of play it conservatively, play everything close to the chest, not have to go out there and ask Baker to make these fantastic passes, is going to help you with your turnover ratio, and being able to run the ball effectively and pass when you need to out of this great set is going to help you with that one-score win rate. So that's why I think the Browns can stay there. The Chiefs are just an excellent team. The Steelers, I think they can stay there. Again, it's maybe just more stylistically that I like their approach to the game, but that could go either way depending on how Big Ben goes. Teams like the Colts, though, I don't see them keeping up this great just set here. I really like Frank Reich. I really think he's a great coach, and I think a lot of guys really admire him, and he's just somebody that you can really take a lot of notes from. But he's turning to Carson Wentz from Phillip Rivers, and Phillip Rivers was never like the best quarterback in the league, but he was very competent, above average, knew what the hell he was doing, and he had a very quick release. And that's what a lot of people loved about Phillip Rivers, is he come up to the line, you're snapping the ball, and within 3 seconds, typically that ball is out. He knows where he's going. He knows how to read the defense. He was a veteran. Carson Wentz is not like that. Carson Wentz likes to hold the ball. He likes to read the defense. He likes to wait until somebody actually comes open. And that may be fine depending on where you're at. Like when the Eagles had an amazing line and they won the Super Bowl, a lot of the wins that he got for that team were based on that offensive line giving him enough time to diagnose what was going on. The Colts, while yes, they do have a good offensive line, I don't foresee them giving him enough time to do that, especially because the receivers he has are not great separators, and they just lost T.Y. Hilton. So he's asking for a bunch of guys that have never really shown us a whole lot in the NFL to go out there and separate and give him clean targets in a clean pocket. And that's just not, I just don't see that happening. And with the injuries that they've suffered, a brand new quarterback, and really seeming like they want to rely on Jonathan Taylor to get the wins, I don't see their turnover ratio staying where it's at. And if the turnover ratio dips, even if it goes back to just an average 50-50 ratio, that one-score win percentage rate is going to drop as well, and I could see that dropping down to 50%. And now you're looking at least 4 losses, maybe 5 because we have a 17-game season. So maybe 4 or 5 losses that come because the ball went the wrong way, they didn't get the turnover, he took a bad sack. So I'm looking at the Colts and I'm really fading them, honestly, in a lot of spots, and these two ratios are a big reason as to why. The Saints, again, obviously they lost Drew Brees. Jameis Winston is not nearly as careful with the ball as Drew Brees was in his prime. Now, Drew Brees was not at his peak last year, so it's not like they're going from peak Drew Brees to, Jameis. But Jameis, just the way he plays, is a little bit more carefree with the ball. At least it was when he played with the Buccaneers. And if he's turning the ball over and they don't keep this +7 turnover ratio, same thing is going to happen. They're going to lose some on the one-score win rate, and that's going to hurt their team as well. And really, to me, just a fantasy note here, a lot of people are taking Kamara really high. And don't get me wrong, he's a great player, and Sean Payton's a wonderful coach, and I really, really like those guys. But if they are having trouble keeping the ball, not turning it over, and they're constantly playing with like these really tight margins, these like one-score win games, or just having to like dink and dunk their way down there to keep Jameis from making mistakes downfield, I can see that hurting Kamara. I can see him not getting enough really touchdowns, because he had a whole crap load of touchdowns last year. I could see that whole offense really taking a step back, because they're going to have to run at least a slightly different offense than they did last year with Drew Brees. Might be more aggressive, and so you might have some shots downfield with Jameis, which might help guys like a Traquan Smith, but it's not going to really do a whole lot for Alvin Kamara. All right, guys, and then the Titans, I did add the one-score win rate there, so they were at 78% at the end of the year. But the team I really want to talk about, and this will be the last team for the plus side, is the Dolphins. So they had a turnover ratio of +7 as well. However, I don't think that turnover ratio is really sustainable for them. And not that they won't have a good defense, but a lot of these teams, like I said, the Browns, even the Steelers and the Titans, the reason that they have these great turnover ratios is because of the style they play. They like to run the ball. They like to be very safe with the ball, and they don't ask their quarterbacks to go out and do a whole lot. So, it's a lot easier to have a good turnover ratio when you're not really, throwing the ball very far, when you're not being very risky with the ball. And so you can just keep possession very well, and now all your defense has to do is get just a handful more turnovers, and you have a good turnover ratio. The Dolphins are not that type of team. They're not going to sit there and hand the ball off to Myles Gaskin or Malcolm Brown or whatever other person they have back there. They're probably going to ask Tua to do more than he did last year. And last year they had Tua and Ryan Fitzpatrick, and they were kind of going back and forth, but the defense was just really bailing them out. The defense was hitting on all cylinders, and they ended up with a +7 turnover ratio. This year, like I said, I don't see that happening. I'm not saying the defense is not going to be good or it's not going to be great. I'm just saying it's probably not going to be that good. Now, on the flip side, though, what about their one-score win rate? Now, their one-score win rate was only 40%. So they lost 60% of their games that ended up coming down to one score. Now, I do think that is going to improve. So we now have Tua getting into his second year. We also have Tua getting away from some of the things that hurt him last year, and I've gone over this in several videos, so I'm not going to rehash it too much. But basically, 2020 was not a year in which the whole team prepped around Tua. This year it is, and this year he is really primed to have a great year. Now, they also added some offensive weapons that are going to help, and that are also going to help Tua, guys like Will Fuller and Jalen Waddle, who can actually separate. They're not just 50-50 pass catchers like a Devontae Parker. Those things are going to help not just Tua, but the whole team. And so I can see, even though I think that the turnover ratio is going to regress, and I think they will probably be closer to that 50-50 turnover ratio, I think their one-score win rate is going to improve, and it's also going to regress to the mean in the sense that will also go to 50-50. So you got to really add, let's say, one more win because of that one-score win rate, and probably take away one win because of the turnover ratios. So you're probably looking at about an even split there. So teams like that, again, this is important, or this is why it's important to look at both of these ratios. You can't just look at one and be like, oh, okay, we're good here. Because even though the turnovers may change, your one-score win rate may have been an outlier for the year prior, and now it's going to change as well. So those are the positives. One thing I want to give you guys here is an MVP bet that I just made recently. I don't always take MVP bets, but this year the odds were just so good. I figured, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and throw it on there. I took Tua as MVP for this upcoming season. The odds are plus 6,600, which means it's 66-1. Now, that is on Intersports Sportsbook. If you want to take a look at it, they also have all the other MVP bets up there. But at 66-1, the max bet is $50, but the payout is over $3,000. It's like $3,300, something like that. As I was saying with Tua, there's a lot of things that I think are going to be helping him this year. He should be taking that second-year quarterback step up, and having the team really behind him and focused on his success this year, I think is going to just boost him or catapult him up the list here. And I think, like I said in the Hot Takes video, I really do think he's going to end up being a top 8 quarterback for fantasy, for real life football. And if this team can get 10 wins behind Tua, he is a prime MVP candidate. He can run, he can throw, he can stretch the play, he can do whatever you need him to do. And the fact that he was being so overlooked, if this team is as good as I think it's going to be, and let's say that they end up with 10 wins, I think you're going to have a lot of people looking at Tua and saying, wow, this kid really took his step up, and that team was not nearly as good when they didn't have Tua, and for those reasons he gets some votes as the MVP. And hey, if it works out, plus 6,600 is a really good bet, and that's going to honestly take care of a lot of your season, even if you end up not coming out at a 52% win rate. But like I said, that's my MVP bet. If you want to follow it, you can. If not, that's fine. But you may want to look into taking Tua in your fantasy drafts if you haven't already drafted. I think right now he's going in about like the 11th or 12th round. I think the guys that are going around that range are like him, Justin Fields, and Trey Lance. Tua is starting from day one. This is his second year, not his rookie year. And I think that he's just primed. So that's another way, just another pick there. But lastly, guys, let's go ahead and get over to the negative turnover ratios. And these are, again, going to be -7 or more. And then we'll go look at the one-score win rate as well. So your teams that had the -7 turnover ratios are the Bengals, the Cowboys, the Broncos, the Jaguars, and the Eagles. They all were below 50% on the one-score win rate. So the Bengals are at 14%, Cowboys at 43%, Broncos at 40%, the Jaguars at 17%, and the Eagles at 38%. Now, something that I want to bring up that sticks out to me, but if you haven't been looking at NFL stuff from last year, I don't expect you to see it right away. A lot of these teams had quarterback issues. So the Bengals had Joe Burrow go down, I believe it was week 5 of last year, towards the beginning of the year. The Cowboys had Dak go down as well, and then the Eagles lost Carson Wentz partway through the year as well. So these teams that lose their quarterback, immediately both of these ratios just plummet, because you're going to bring in a backup who, one, is not as careful with the ball as your starter was. That's why your other guy was the starter. So it's going to hurt your turnover ratio. And now you have a lesser quarterback who is maybe turning over the ball more, putting you in worse situations where the defense knows what you got to do as far as like having to throw or having to run. And then you're asking them to win these tight games. It's not going to happen. So you end up with a bad one-score win rate. So keep that in mind as we're going through this stuff. The Bengals, like I said, I just don't trust their coach, guys. And maybe he'll prove me wrong, but I really could see the Bengals just firing him after this year, maybe even partway through this year. He's made so many bad decisions. He brought in a receiver when he really needed a lineman. He wasted he used a first-round pick on Jamar Chase, a guy that I love, and I get the whole like LSU connection. That's great, but that just was not what the team needed. And it's not going to help them improve this one-score win rate. And until Jamar Chase can knock off some rust from not playing football in a year, I doubt he's going to help the turnover ratio either. The Cowboys, obviously, they lost Dak. That was really their biggest issue last year, and that hurt them with this one-score win rate. I'm honestly kind of surprised that they even had as good of a win rate as they did. I could see that increasing this year. Still probably being around like the 50% range, not too much more. Like I said, even with Dak at the beginning of the year, they were putting up a lot of points, but it wasn't like they were going undefeated or anything. I think they still started like 1-3 or 1-4, whatever it was when Dak went down. So, and even at the one win was like crazy ending onside kick with the Falcons, who just couldn't win to save their life last year. So that's still, like I said, it may regress to the mean, but it's probably not going to be very good. Now, the turnover ratio, I think, will change. I think with Dak, they are going to protect the ball a little bit more. And with a Zeke coming in, a healthy Zeke with no COVID, should be able to run the ball a little bit more effectively. CeeDee Lamb coming into his second year should know a little bit more of not only the offense, but just the NFL and what he needs to do and his playing roles and things like that. Amari Cooper finally completely healthy, or should be. I think those do help. The turnover ratio probably does regress a little bit more to the mean, so you have a 50-50 there, or maybe not even 50-50. It might be still like a 40-60 kind of thing. But either way, I see both of these regressing to the mean. And if that's the case, I really do think the Cowboys are going to end up with like a 9-7 record, something around those, around that line. Maybe 8-9, 9-7, somewhere around there. So that being, or I'm sorry, 9 is, sorry, I couldn't think of it. Take it here. 9-6. Sorry if I could think straight for a second. But that all being said, let's go ahead and move on. So the Broncos are next. Broncos just bad again on both sides here. And Drew Lock, I don't believe he really missed a lot, if any, time last year. And these numbers here, I think, are why they moved on from him and they went to a guy like a Teddy Bridgewater. When your turnover ratio is 11-28, you've got to change something up, especially if that's your starting quarterback and he's still turning over the ball at that kind of rate. You need to bring in somebody who's a little bit safer, and that's exactly what they did with Teddy. So I know everybody's familiar with Teddy already, but just to recap, he is going to be not only the starter, but he's going to change their offense a little bit in the sense that he's going to take the shorter, safer passes. He's going to be very comfortable with just dump-offs, and I don't see him stretching the ball very far down the field. And of all the positions, he's actually most comfortable passing to his slot receiver. So even last year when he was with the Panthers, I did a little workup on him, and I think everybody was really high on DJ Moore, and DJ Moore had a fine year, but my research beforehand said he was not going to be the main target. It was going to be guys like Curtis Samuel, and that's exactly what happened. So for those reasons, I think that the turnover ratio is going to be a little bit better. And with the turnover ratio a little bit better, the one-score win rate should also go up just a little bit. And so the Broncos, I think, are going to be a better team, but I don't think they're going to set the world on fire. They're probably going to be just bumped back up to like an average team. So another team that ends up going like 8-9, somewhere around that, again, around that point. Now, the Jaguars, so this is a little bit different again, just in the sense that the Jaguars are bringing in not only a rookie quarterback, but a first-time head coach. And if you've already been watching these videos for a while, you know that's like a big no-no for me. I do not like taking those teams in any sense. There's just too much novelty in that offense. The Urban Meyer is a fine college coach. I don't think he's really ready for success at the NFL level, at least not this year. One of the biggest examples of that is him giving Gardner Minshew so much playing time, not only in preseason but in practice, having him go with the ones, being so indecisive with who his quarterback was going to be, when we all knew damn well from day one Trevor Lawrence was your starter. He just continued to try and play this charade of like, no, I'm going to maybe Gardner. And at the end of the day, he ended up trading Gardner Minshew away for a conditional 6th-round pick. You took so much time and development away from your first overall draft pick that you knew was going to be heading into the season as your starting number one quarterback, to give time to a guy that you were comfortable trading away for a 6th-round pick. Terrible decision, terrible prep. Not a good decision. And maybe that wasn't all on him. Maybe that was like a GM role or something else. But I got to say, it just doesn't look good on him. And now he's going to go out there and he's going to expect Trevor Lawrence to perform as this first time, appearance in the NFL. And he's going to be playing up against the Panthers week 1. Not the hardest of matches, but it's not something that I think are going to be, the Texans in week 1. Not the hardest of matches with the Texans, especially the Texans, but I don't think that's something where he's really primed Lawrence for success, and I don't think that team is really ready to take the step forward yet. So for those reasons, I couldn't tell you very accurately what I think these ratios are going to be next year, but I don't think they're going to be average. Maybe they will be a little bit better than they are now, especially if Trevor Lawrence is the quarterback we think he's going to be. Maybe that helps their turnover ratio a little bit, again, which in turn would increase their one-score win rate just a little bit. But at the end of the day, I think that they're probably going to end this season with something like a 25 to 30% one-score win rate and like a 50-50 turnover ratio if they can manage to do that. Lastly, we'll go over the Eagles. The Eagles are 11-19 as far as turnover ratio goes. Again, suffered a lot of injuries last year, and if you did not follow the Eagles or you weren't playing fantasy or weren't involved in betting last year, you might not have been aware. But the Eagles, by the end of the season, I'm really surprised they weren't just having walk on open camps. Just come on and see if you can catch a ball. Literally, the entire team. I don't know if they got in a bus accident or what, but quarterbacks are going down, linemen were going down, receivers are going down, linebackers are going down, tight ends were going down. Seriously, I don't think they had more than 5 starters starting by the end of the season, and just the injury bug hit them, and it hit hard. And for that reason, you saw this turnover ratio just plummet. Their win rate, again, not great. Now, they're bringing in a new coach as well, and they are going to be playing with Jalen Hurts. What scares me about the Eagles is that this new coach, it's going to take him a little bit of time to adjust to the NFL. I think it's Nick Sirianni. He's going to probably take a minute to really get adjusted, and first-year head coaches are not typically very good unless you're Sean McVay. Aside from that, you're playing with Jalen Hurts, so this is really his second year in the league, and he's really not didn't get the full season last year with Carson Wentz there. He just kind of came in as a plug-in towards the end of the season. Maybe he's better than we're thinking, but what scares me is that they are not going into the season confident in Jalen Hurts. Literally every time this offseason a brand name quarterback has come up, the Eagles are in talks for him. Deshaun Watson trade, the Eagles were being floated around. Now there is another quarterback out there the Eagles are trying to bring in. That's right, it was Gardner Minshew. They actually just signed Gardner Minshew. So they're constantly looking for other quarterbacks, and they're not saying that Jalen Hurts isn't good, but they're not saying anything positive. I have not heard anything positive come out of camp for Jalen Hurts. I've heard, some things like Devonta Smith is doing well, and, Miles Sanders looks okay, but I have not heard any positive news about Jalen Hurts. Everything I hear coming out of him is either, out of the Eagles camp, is either he doesn't look great, he maybe doesn't look he's ready to be the day one starter, or he's, doing quote-unquote better. He's making progress. He's coming along. And so these things just do not scream faith to me in their quarterback, and if I know it, I'm assuming that he's got to know it, or people around him's got to know it. The team has got to know it. And while I think mathematically and statistically, all these numbers should maybe regress a little bit in their favor, if Jalen Hurts is not their guy, again, this is another one I really couldn't tell you very accurately. At least I don't think it'll be accurate as to where these numbers are going to go. If he is having problems with turnovers or making decisions or taking sacks or anything like that, he's just not really ready to be a starter, that turnover ratio is probably not going to get much better, if any. And let's say that it does maybe increase just a little bit, and maybe instead of a -8, they end up with a -4 turnover ratio. That obviously is going to help a little bit, but the one-score win rate with a brand new coach, and he's trying to kind of adapt to a quarterback on the fly as to someone he's not even really sure if he wants out there or not, it's going to hurt them. And so I'm going to give them a slight increase in both, but at the end of the day, I think they're still going to be a below-average team. And in the NFC East, where that division is pretty much up for grabs, that just slight tick down from an average team is going to hurt them and really hurt their chances of winning the division or making the playoffs. So for those reasons, I don't like the Eagles really. I'm kind of fading them everywhere. Not a team I'm really strong on one way or the other just because there's so many unknowns, but I don't trust them. So Again, guys, sorry this was a longer video. I will have another video later this week, and that one will be actually NFC East futures. So we will talk about the Eagles and the Cowboys again, but that'll be very specific as far as some plays and some bets you can take before the season starts. So hopefully you learned something here, got some information out of this, and you know who to be looking at or what to be looking at as we get into the season here. But thanks again. Have a great day, and good luck out there.